Hey everyone out there, my name is Devin Adams. I'm a Fortinet instructor here in Tempe, Arizona for Dynamic Worldwide, and I record these videos for the people who've taken my class. Alright guys, so I've been trying to record these because I'm starting a new FortiManager FortiAnalyzer class 6.0. And I've been exploring the features, and I want to make sure that you guys have the ability to build your own labs. And I've been really testing the limitations of these devices that are free, and they are free with a support contract. If you go to the Fortinet support website, you can download them, and the second you spin them up in GNS3, they will give you 15 days. All right. Now, there's a whole bunch of videos I've already recorded on building your own GNS3 lab, and I highly recommend it if you are going for a certification, or even if you're in a production network and you want somewhere safe to play around. But there are limitations, and that's actually why it took me so long to get to this video. And this video is building pretty much a hub and spoke topology for our VPNs using the VPN manager in FortiManager. And I found out that to keep people from using these free VMs in a production environment, Fortinet limits the cryptographies that are involved. So I'll get to that point, but that's why it's taken so long. So anyways, but yeah, in this video we're going to use the VPN manager from the FortiManager to build a hub and spoke topology, and this local FortiGate is going to be our main FortiGate. All right, and then all these guys are going to be spokes. All right, and instead of having to build all those tunnels manually, we'll take advantage of the FortiManager, and we'll see how it's done. So why don't we go ahead and get started? So I'm going to go into my Windows PC here. All right, I'm going to log in with my super secret password to my FortiManager. Okay. All right, so there we are, and now I'm going to go to my device manager just to kind of review what's going on. So up to this point, everything is functioning. So the only thing is that we don't have any VPN tunnels. So if there was like internal resources that were needing to be accessed by the local FortiGate, right? It wouldn't be possible. So we need to build up that tunnels, or those tunnels. So let's go ahead and take advantage of the VPN manager. Now, if you don't see the VPN manager, there is a step that you need to do. If you go to System Settings and you go down to your All ADOMs, so we only have one because we have ADOMs turned off, but you can edit this bad boy, and you can turn on VPN management from there if you don't see it. Okay, so all right. In fact, I'll take AP off because I don't really need it anyways. So I don't have any access points. I wish I did. Okay, so but now when we come back here to our VPN manager, we're going to enable central management, which essentially says, hey, let the FortiGate get all of its settings from the FortiManager, and let all the magic happen from the FortiManager. So they're called VPN communities, and once again, I highly recommend that you guys download the FortiManager administration guide and also the FortiGate administration guide from help.fortinet.com. But let's go ahead and build what they call a community. Now, a community is just another way of saying a VPN topology. Okay, so let's go ahead and say create new, and we are creating the community, so not the actual endpoints. So we'll say VPN access to headquarters, and we are going to do a star hub and spoke topology. All right, we'll hit next. And then what's nice about this too is that you can use pre-share keys that are auto-generated, and then they're pushed down via the configuration from the FortiManager, so you don't even see them, which is kind of cool. So, or you can of course use your CA if you have one in like a domain environment to do it. You don't even need a private one for that. You could use a public one to identify yourself, but we're going to leave this on generate. Now this is why it took so long, guys, is that these cryptographies, and even those aren't very impressive, are being limited because it is a free VM. So I found out that the free VMs on the FortiGates can only do DES. So good old DES. Anyways, and like I said, it's just to keep it from actually being used in production. I respect that. So, but that's going to be for our entire community. Okay, those are going to be the two that are negotiated. Now, in real life, you're going to want to make sure that a couple of things here. One, whatever the compliances that you have to uphold in your organization to maintain your integrity, or whatever buzzwords you want to put in there, make sure you're following that. And also make sure the FortiManager and the FortiGates can both support those cryptos. Okay, so because that's probably one of the most demanding part of a VPN tunnel is the cryptography. I apologize. Whew, I never get enough sleep, guys. Anyways, so yeah, so just make sure you're careful with that. So let's hit next. All right, this one I'm going to just pretty much roll with it. So a VPN zone, I'm going to leave that as in default, and what it does is that it puts everything in zones so we don't have to have redundant firewall policies. So because I don't have zones already created, I'm going to say just create default ones for me. Okay, I am definitely not using NAT transversal. I have public IP addresses for all of my FortiGates, but right here is where a lot of the magic comes from, because what we can do is actually generate quick mode selectors on the fly using the auto negotiate. So yeah, just make sure that you have that selected. If you want to use a hub and spoke topology, it just makes it a lot easier. Okay, other than that, you're going to have to define each one separately. So let's hit next. All right, that's just a little review, and then we hit OK. Now our community is built. Those are going to be the common settings between all of our devices participating in the star topology. All right, so we're there. Let's go ahead and add our members here. So, and I might split this video up into a couple of different pieces just because it's going to be long. But let's go ahead and let's add a managed gateway. Now, what is a managed gateway versus an unmanaged gateway? So a managed gateway are FortiGates that are being centrally managed by the FortiManager. All right, unmanaged gateways, okay, are going to be FortiGates that are not managed by the FortiManager and other third-party appliances that support IPsec. So that's a completely different beast. It's pretty straightforward, but I'm not going to cover it here because all of our devices are under central management. So, and you can see that if you click down to headquarters, see all the common settings right there. And I'm going to say create new managed gateway versus external gateway. So here we go. So our very first one is going to be our protected subnets. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because before I was using my local LAN and dynamic mapping to do a lot of this stuff. Okay, so, but you're going to see there's a problem here when we start using this in our quick mode selectors coming up, simply because of the fact that when it goes onto like a remote site, suddenly that local LAN is going to turn to a different IP address depending on what target it is. So I found that out also the hard way when I was first doing this. So as you can see here though, we can actually get away with probably not creating an IP address for absolutely every single branch office. We can still use dynamic mapping to an extent. But when it comes down to the actual headquarters to your hub, you're going to want to keep that object not dynamic. Okay, so you're just going to want to keep that just the way it is. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to hit cancel. All right, and I'm going to go to my policy and objects, and I'm going to create the headquarters IP address. Okay, so for the protected subnets. Now, protected subnets just mean the subnets that are going to be encapsulated inside of that IPsec tunnel. So there are our LAN IP addresses. All right, it's just a different way of saying that. So let's go to our device objects. Let's go to create new. Nope, those are interfaces. Addresses. Okay, and I'm going to create a couple here and explain them as I go. So the first one I'm going to create is just going to be called HQ subnets, and I use camel casing there. So, and this is going to be 10.10.10 .0 with a /24. Okay, use it for any interface. All right, and also if we ever need to use it for static routing, it can appear there. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to create another object, but this one's going to be called spoke. Spoke subnet. Okay, and this one is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, going to get dynamic mapping. So I got to pick some kind of IP address there. So I'm going to just use 10.10. I don't know, 20.0 as the default, and then per device mapping. I guess I could have just left it a quad 0, but I'm going to say, you know what, for our branch FortiGates, and if we look at our topology here, our branch FortiGate has 10.10.30. All right, so let's go back and let's type in 10.10.30/0. Okay, and then 10.10.40 for our data center. Okay, and you know what, that's just gonna bug me. So you know what, I'm just gonna use 10.10.00/ I don't know, 16 to kind of supernet that. That way the dynamic mapping can be truly associated with each one, because it doesn't matter, because when the FortiGate actually gets the configuration from the FortiManager, it just plugs in the right IP addresses anyways. I just don't want one IP address to be the default and be confusing if anyone else is managing the FortiManager with me. So, but here I'm going to finally do the 10.10.20/24 to represent our remote FortiGates subnets. So, and if we go ahead and we see on our topology, those are our protected subnets on all 3 locations here. All right, so okay, so then like I said, in case we need it for static routing, we'll say yes. All right, and there's one more here that I'm going to put in, and there might be a different or a better way to do this, but this is the one that, that I've done. So, and that is just to make sure I have a supernet object mask. So I'm just going to say some subnet, all right, and I'm going to represent it by 10.10.0.0/16. It's probably going to bark at me, but that's okay. But this one is not going to have any kind of dynamic mapping on it. It's going to be standing alone, and it's a /16. It's not a /24. So, all right. So there we go. Now this is kind of neat. It's like, hey buddy, you know that you have this IP address somewhere else. Are you sure you want to continue? And the reason is yes, because the other one is mapped per device. All right. Whereas this one stands alone. All right. So we're going to hit OK. That is fine. That's what I want. So, and then going forward. All right. So just as a little review here, what we did is that we created a stagnant HQ subnet, and we also did a dynamic object for our spokes. All right, and then also a supernet. Where are you at? Subnet. All right. So, and those will make a little bit more sense here in just a second. So, but let's go back to our VPN manager, and let's go forward. All right. So we're going to go ahead and create a managed gateway. Protected subnet now is going to be our HQ subnets. Okay, and that's what's going to be our LAN side here of our local FortiGate. Okay, we're going to hit next. What device is going to play the role as the hub? Well, it is our local FortiGate. What default VPN interface is this? This is going to be the WAN interface. All right, pointing out to our ISP. And then the local gateway is going to be the public IP address of that WAN for that particular FortiGate. So that is a publicly facing IP address. Remember, we make believe this in our lab environment that 10.200 is public. Why? Because we're really using the internet. We can't use other people's public IP addresses. So here we go. Now, local ID I don't really have to worry about because I am not doing a dial-up that has to identify itself by a local ID, but I am going to do routing automatic, and all that does is that it's going to put in the static routes for me on the fly. Okay, so, and then also if we have summary networks that are defined, we should do it here. Now you know why we did the supernetting of the some subnets. All right, so what this is going to do is create an additional static IP address route for 10.10 to go to the hub on our spokes. Okay, so we're going to hit OK, and we have one piece of the pie done. All right, so that is our hub. Let's go ahead and go forward and do our spokes. Okay, so manage gateway, because we're managing the devices. All right, so our protected subnet now is going to be our spoke subnet. Now that spoke subnet should dynamically change itself depending on, next, the device spoke that we pick, which is going to be, let's just start with our remote FortiGates. Next, our default is going to be WAN, and we can take advantage of that because of the dynamic mapping, all right, of our interfaces. Next, and the IP address, if you look on our topology, is going to be 10.200.3.1 on that remote FortiGate. So here we go, 10.200.3.1. We're going to hit next. And as you can see here, we're going to have the IP addresses statically defined automatically. We're going to hit OK. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to do it 2 more times. So normally I'd pause the video, but you know what? We're rolling with it. So let's just do it. Okay. So once again, it's going to be the spoke subnet. Next, the device is going to be the spoke branch office. All right. The WAN interface. See how nice all this dynamic mapping is? It's making this pretty darn easy. Okay. And then it's going to be 10.200. Did I get a comma in there? What a turkey. All right. 2.1 as our make-believe public IP address. All right. We're going to hit OK. And we have one last one, which is our data center. All right. So now, if you ever get that where you click it and it says nothing found, just like say 1, 2, skip a few in your head, or 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, it's just loading up the drop-down menu for you. So, all right, here we go. So spoke, hit next, and you can have multiple subnets too, and I might do that in a later video where we add the DMZ on the local side. So it's going to be a spoke, data center, next, WAN, local, which is going to be 10.200.4.1. Next, automatically do my statics, hit OK. So at this point, we have our phase 1 and our phase 2s configured within our community. The only thing that's left now is to build the firewall policies to let traffic flow. There's a catch, and that catch is we can't make the firewall policies until we have our VPN zones created automatically by the VPN manager. So we need to push down those settings to make that happen. And this is where it can get a little bit confusing and not very intuitive, but I promise you this is how it works. At least it's been my experience. If anyone's watching from Fortinet and want to FortiSpank me, leave a comment. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to go to our device manager, and as you can see, just our policy packages statuses are changed. And this is why it's confusing, because you're probably like, hey, wait a second, we were just making zones and we're just making like static IP addresses. Doesn't that also fall into the config status over here? Yes, it does, and that's why it's confusing. All right, but I promise you it's both. So what you're going to want to do, all right, is that you can go to like, okay, and you can right click. Actually, you know what, I'm going to do it the long way. I'll do the install wizard. All right, so what's the package on this one? It's going to be our branch office baselines, just like we were using before. There's our FortiGates. We're going to hit next. And you see how there's now a VPN manager that is there that wasn't there before. All right, so if we do an install preview, and I just want to show you guys what it's exactly doing here when it drops it down. All right, you see how it is making the static routes with the 10.10./16 to the HQ, and it's also doing the pre-share key. All right, and it's also doing the zone. All right, and that's what it's going to be doing for all the devices. Okay, so let's go ahead and install it and actually push it down. And here I'm going to hit pause because it's been my understanding that this takes a 40-minute, so just a second, guys. So all right, guys, as you can see, it pushed down just fine, so I'm going to hit finish. Okay, And now we got ours synchronized. And then I'm going to do it for this one. Now I named it baseline, but they are different policy packages here. So that was kind of a ding dong thing for me to do. But if I go ahead and I just do a reinstall policy, by the way, I can skip a lot of that wizard part and it will pick the last policy package that was assigned to it and then just drop it down. So what's nice about this though is that it doesn't do like an install config where it just forces the configuration down without doing a check. This one still does a check. So if we do our install preview, we can see what's actually happening on the local FortiGate to make all this magic happen. Okay, so if we just give it a second here. All right, so as you can see here, we have our VPN manager, local gateway, remote gateway. So it's building them up for all the tunnels. Come on, guys, that is flipping cool. I don't care what you say. I think that's just awesome. So, and then you can see our zones. All right, so it's actually making a zone and dropping all of the IPsec tunnels into it. There's the pre-share key. All right, there's all of our static routes being created. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I just think that's the bee's knees. So I see that we're missing one though. I don't know where the remote one is. So that's okay. That's okay. We'll roll with it. So I had to test this out and do a reverting, and I wonder if it just kept the old route in there for me. I'm not too sure, but let's go ahead and close it out. Let's hit next, and let's install it down. So we'll find out the hard way if it works or not. So I didn't forget to put the remote one in there, did I? I don't think I did. So okay. Hey, that one went fairly quicker, so not too bad. All right. Nice, nice. Yeah, I bet you anything I reverted the one that already had it. No, there it is. Boom. Okay, I was nervous for just a minute. Anyways. Okay, cool. So, and then last but not least is going to be our data center. So we'll go ahead and push that one down also. All right. And once again, we're doing this because we really can't write the firewall policies to make all this happen without all the zonings, without all the mappings, without all the static IP addresses, blah, 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 blah. So you have to do this first. And then the next step after that is going to be creating the firewall policies to let all of the traffic flow. All right. So, all right, great. So I'm going to let that one on our data center FortiGate kind of sit there for a bit. So, because like I said, I'm maxing out my computer here. So I'm going to hit pause real briefly. All right, wonderful. So we got an OK status, and we are all in the clear. So once again, I'm actually going to stop it right here because I see I'm about 20-ish minutes out. All right, so but what we did in this video is that we use the VPN manager to create a VPN community, and VPN communities are topologies. All right, so once we defined all the common settings between them, we then started plugging in our managed FortiGates here, giving them roles and what subnets to protect, meaning what does the encapsulation. Then after that, we push down using our device manager. All right, even though it says config status synchronized, it's really changing more than just policy packages here. It's going to be defining the VPN zone, all right, to drop all of the interfaces in there, and it's also going to do all the static routes, so on and so forth. And then once they were down, we can now, in our next video, create the firewall policies and then test this out. So I'm going to stop right there and keep your fingers crossed. Everything's going to work. Okay, it should work, and I'll see you guys then. So thank you.